Hey guys, Youngblood with you, and what we're going to do in this video is take you on a quick tour of the Drake Caterpillar and take you along for a ride and kind of talk about how it flies and, some of the expectations with the ship. Now, this ship really turned out to be one that was developed way beyond my expectations, and there's a lot of really awesome things about the ship. The sheer size of it is nothing short of impressive, and some people are going to love it, some people are going to hate it, but the red paint job is one that I actually really like. One design decision that I thought was a little bit odd was the Covalix branding on the side, which I'm sure is something you're going to be able to change when the skins are involved. I'm guessing that's not a permanent addition, but it is a little bit odd. So when we look at the ship overall, you can tell we've got the 4 modules. They are all labeled on the outside with 1, 2, 3, and 4. Now that's where you're going to be able to do your customization later on down the line. Now up front, you've got the mandatory kind of head module. It's got the front-loading bay on the front. It's also got these weird protrusions on it, and I think initial concepts seem to indicate that these were either going to be weapons or they were going to be tractor beams, but what we actually see here is something that we can't really be too confident about, other than the fact that it's got parking sensor written on it, which seems to indicate some form of scanning. Also at the top, those top ones, they almost look like a docking system, but it says sensor system up there. So again, these seem to indicate some sort of forward scanning, which in a piracy operation or search and rescue or salvage could obviously have some benefit to it. Now, as we kind of run down this, you've got the landing gear that kind of pulls down. It gives you a bunch of legs on the ship, which kind of seems to indicate the Caterpillar name. You've also got, which I forgot to point out over here, is the turret on the top, which currently has 2 M6A size 4 laser weapons on it, which is pretty beefy for a turret, and that's actually going to be included on that front module. And then you have another one that faces rearward, but it obviously is going to give you more range of motion than that, but that's going to be on the bottom, trying to give you your firing from that angle. Other than that, there's a couple other segments. So we've got the front module, we've got the 4 interchangeable modules. This right here is your command module, and what this piece actually does is it is kind of your central hub. It's where you're actually going to be able to get in the ship, command the ship, fly the ship, do scanning. It's basically your bridge, and this actually has the ability to break apart from the ship, at least at some point it will, and fly on its own. And you can see this is more of a symmetrical design than anything else on the ship, if you imagine that as a self-sustaining little craft. It's got its own engines. It can break away from the ship right there, and we'll go in there and do a little bit of exploring soon. And then you've got this part, which is kind of the main module of the ship. Inside that we have engineering and different ports, like habitation and different things. On the back side, you've got the primary thrusters, which are very, very large. You've got 2 on the sides, you've got 2 in the middle. And the last piece before we really get to the inside of the ship is this nice little canopy over here on the right wing, on the starboard wing, where you're actually going to have your tractor set up. And if I had to guess, I would assume that you're going to have a tractor beam that's equipped somewhere along here. And once we get inside, it'll make a little more sense. This might actually be your tractor beam. It doesn't look super gimbaled though, which makes me wonder. And it says on their tractor sensor. So I don't know if that's a beam or if that's a gun and sensor all on one, but we'll find out soon. So let's go ahead and head inside of this ship, and we'll talk a little bit about, what the design is and where everything goes. So we've got our primary elevator that's coming down now. And on this ship, your user interface is going to be these little up or down type of, modules. And we're going to see that in a couple different places. So let's go ahead and head up into the ship. And this is the elevator room, as you may have expected. Nothing super exciting in here other than it's going to lead you to a couple different locations. And you've actually got your kind of arms bay here. So if you need to get out of the ship and use some weapons pretty quick, you do have a small little armory station here for you to get your weapons. And then there's a couple different places that you can go. One is going to be where your crew is going to spend a lot of time. You've got your kitchen area where you've got your table, you've got some of the sensor or the screens that'll give you information about the ship and things that are going on. You've got your stoves and your storage and your sinks, and it's basically what you would expect, including bunks. Now, past that, you're going to notice that all of these doors, and this is one thing I really like, have kind of names on them, so you know what you're getting into. It's not just some random room. So here we're going to go into the elevator access, which is where we were just at. And if we want to go into the lower hallway, we just continue. where you start to get other options as far as where you can go. So for example, engineering is dead ahead. Now before we go on, I just want to point out the design aesthetic, because it's this really interesting balance of a lot of detail crafted into this ship. It shows CIG's getting very, very good at their designs, but at the same time it was intentionally done to be kind of rugged and rough and almost look like it was patched together in the Drake aesthetic. It's a really interesting kind of balance. So engineering is where you're going to have your primary engines. You got two gigantic ones that you can see are ported out to go to the big engines on the side of your ship. They all have different controls on them, which I'm sure are going to give you different things that you can do. And then further back here, we've got more designs. We've got this engineering station. And if you look at this, you notice these are all numbered. You've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Now, if I had to guess, I would say this is actually going to be more for like controlling your different, shields of your different modules. So, for example, you've got your primary one here, which is going to give you, your standard power allocation and priority. You've also got all these different ones. So it might be like Module 1, Module 2, Module 3, Module 4, Head Module, Command Module, and gives you those different ability to control those things. And these screens should all be customizable to let you kind of make them what you want them to be. So moving past that, you can actually head into the bottom turret here, or we can take the stairway and actually go upstairs, where we have the option for the center hallway. Now, I'm going to go ahead and eliminate this off to the right. You'll see on the front door it says tractor access, and this is one of my favorite rooms in the ship. You've got this great canopy. It lets you see over the top of your ship. It lets you see all around. And you just basically get really good visibility to what's happening on the ship. But that's not all you have. You've got the control panel where you can actually utilize your tractor and pull cargo into your ship, which we're going to show you in just a minute, these side opening doors, which is going to allow you to actually just drag cargo that's floating in space in. And whether you're doing piracy and you're taking cargo that people dumped for you, or you're doing salvage and you're scooping things in, this should give you a lot of ability to actually do to control that operation. So heading back down into the center hallway, we're going to go ahead and break off and go into the upper hallway, which is where we have some really interesting pieces. So for example, the server access room, which almost looks like the inside of the Herald, you've got the different server racks. Now, when I see this, I think this is something that's just demonstrating that this ship has the ability to do a lot of different roles. And one of those could be info running, some of that could be electronic warfare, some of this could just be providing support for an entire fleet, but regardless of what it is, having the servers and the better computing in here may give you the ability to take on different jobs that other systems and other ships just may not be able to do. So moving back into power plant access, we actually see that we've got our Juno Star Work here. And this is kind of part of the new item system that's in place, and you actually get the look of the part actually being installed, as well as actually seeing capacitor 1 and capacitor 2, which are the different components that you can switch out. So maybe this thing takes damage and you need to replace one of those, or maybe you want to do some upgrades. These are the types of things that you're going to have interactions with. In here, it looks like you got some like thermal insulations on the wall and different control panels and cooling. Now, moving back into jump drive access, I don't actually see a jump drive in here. You've got various things like component housing, which I think is expected on all of these ships. But I wouldn't be surprised if somewhere in here, maybe right here on this metallic plate, you actually get the installation of a jump drive. But it's just another room that's dedicated to having that sort of piece in place. So now that we've taken a look at this, let's go ahead and just head back towards the command module of this ship. Downstairs you have the EVA access, which I'll show you in a moment. But in the bridge, you've got the double doors, again referring to the fact that this ship can actually break apart and fly on its own. And in here we have the bridge facing the back. Now you've got two seats on the sides, and as I turn around, you can imagine you're not going to have great visibility to anything that's going on, but you do have the screen. So this is going to be more, scanning operator, cargo operator, power management, shields, like those types of things are probably what you're going to really rely on more in these seats. It's going to be up here in the captain's seat and the co-pilot seat where you're going to be doing most of the flying. Now, as far as the overall visibility, it's a big kind of freighter. It's not great. You've got a lot of these bars that are in place. You've got the ship itself, which is in the way, based in part on the asymmetric design. That being said, there's not really a whole lot dead ahead that's a real problem. And when you fly the ship, this doesn't really present that much of a problem. It's actually a really cool ship to fly because the maneuvering thrusters that are on top of the ship, there's 3 on top of each one of the modules, 4 on the bottoms of each one of the modules, you actually see them firing off. And it's a really kind of immersive experience to be in. So it is a fun ship to be in. The design is really great. So let's go ahead and head down towards the different cargo modules that we have in place. Now, it's EVA access. There's a couple reasons for that. One is that it leads you towards the different modules, which we'll go into in just a minute. The other reason it's EVA access is because you've got an EVA hatch right here. That's how people are going to be able to board your ship, or you're going to be able to EVA to go do work on the outside of the ship. And inside we have Module 1. And you notice the catwalk on the one side. You've also got the computer screen here with the various controls. Now what the computer screen is going to allow you to do is be able to probably maintain and manage your cargo, as well as potentially other ship functions. But let's just see, we've got the starboard side, and we're facing starboard, so let's go ahead and just open it up. Love it. We'll go ahead and do the port side as well. I'm going to walk downstairs in just a minute to show you what this actually is going to look like from a different place, because you can do that in 2 locations. Let's go ahead and cross through. We'll use the ladder. And down here you can see we've got the kind of base floor. Again, you've got the different controls to open up the doors on the sides. Starboard. Port. And the sound effects on these are really awesome. And again, one other thing, we talked about the modularity, the double doors, to make sure you're not decompressing the ship. You'll notice between each one of these modules, there's 2 sets of doors. So if one does break off, or you decide to leave it somewhere, you're not, decompressing the rest of the cabin. So there's 1. There's 2. I'm opening these for a reason, because once we jump outside the ship, I'm going to show you something. And we're in our final module, not including the forward module. This is the final cargo module. And finally, you're in the forward module. Now, in here, this is the door that opens. It's actually the big forward-facing door. Upstairs, you actually have the ability to get into the final turret, and you can get back into the catwalks and everything. But in here, you actually are going to be able to use this control panel to... Let's get in the right spot. Come on. There we go. It slides forward and the door drops down. Very majestic-like. It is cool that these pistons that actually push the door forward look like they could break your fingers off. Now there's a little bit of clipping issues there that I think need to be worked out, but there are a lot of moving parts here that make it really slick. So now that we've done that, I want to jump outside and show you what the Caterpillar looks like all opened up. Boom. Oh, I forgot a door. Whatever. So, you can see that it is now very open. So if we reevaluate this tractor station over here, you can imagine how easy it's going to be to actually grab cargo and drag it into each one of these modules for you to take apart. The other thing that I look at with this is, we all know the merchantman is the one that's supposed to really be the dedicated storefront, the one where you're actually able to sell things out of, in space or as a market. I have a hard time believing that you're not going to be able to do the exact same thing in your Drake Caterpillar. I could see you very easily being able to drop to a planet, open up the sides of the ship, and all of a sudden have people come over and look at your wares. Whether those would be, illegal weapons or narcotics or slaves or, it could be good things too. Not everybody that owns a Caterpillar is a bad player. It could be, resources or ore or medicine. Like those types of things could all be, traveled with and sold in a market format. Now, it's not going to be as effective as far as like a merchantman, like, when we start talking about being in space and housing a market. But if you're able to land, you do have the ability to walk around, and there's good options for people to see what you're selling without actually having to, go through like an inventory or a manifest to see. So that's the Caterpillar in hangar. It's a big ship. It's a beautiful ship. It's really, really cool. Let's go fly the thing a little bit, talk about some first impressions there, and we'll get into it. And yeah, so here we go. So when you actually get the Caterpillar into flight, it is an interesting ship to fly. And I say that like it's almost surprising, but that's probably the most accurate descriptor of the Caterpillar I can give in general. That being said, Top speed in SCM is 110 meters per second, and that sounds really slow, but you got to remember the flight model changed, and a lot of the speeds were cut in about half, which means that some of the single-seater ships out there actually fly at about 100 SCM. So this is surprisingly quick as far as, you know, a bigger ship or a freighter is concerned. Now, it does have gigantic engines, and these cargo modules that it has are empty right now, so a lot of these are going to be kind of subjective until we actually have an opportunity to load it up with cargo and see what sort of impact that has on the ship overall. So while it's not super fast overall, it has a long boost ability, which means that it's not real fast to accelerate, but you can boost for a very long time. Now, another noteworthy thing as far as this ship goes, and I think we're going to kind of start talking about durability here, is the fact that it actually has 200 countermeasures in total. That's a lot. And I don't know if you have a countermeasure launcher on each one of your modules, so maybe it's front module and the other 4 all have their own. That would kind of make sense, but each one of those actually carries 40 countermeasures, meaning that you're going to start with 160 chaff and 40 flare. Now, you should be able to customize that to whatever you want. Some of those are going to be determined by your avionics. So, for example, you may not be able to have decoys, flares, and chaff, or, you know, EM protection, flares, and chaff. But you are going to at least be able to have 2 options, and it sounds like you're going to have a boatload of them. So as far as being able to sustain your life when you're being attacked by something like a freelancer miss, you should be able to kind of ward off a lot of those bad locking types of attacks. Now, when flying this, the maneuverability isn't anywhere near a fighter. So I don't want to give you guys the impression that you're going to be dogfighting with, you know, an M50. But it is a lot better than what you would expect, and I think a lot of that has to do with the fact that the maneuvering thrusters are big, and they are many, and they are powerful. You know, you've got 3 on top of each one of the modules, which you actually get to see when in flight. It's actually kind of beautiful to watch them go off. You've got 4 on the bottom of the modules, not to mention you've got the primary thrusters and everything, so the ship handles really well. Again, it has no cargo in it at the moment. So when you're actually flying it, I think it's almost going to be a skewed result. But it is promising knowing that you've got that level of maneuverability, which at least later on down the line means you should have good control over the ship, you know, when navigating tight areas or trying to get into cargo areas to, you know, cram everything into your side doors. Now, I was a little bit surprised by the lack of shield durability. You know, when I was attacked by a couple of Auroras that were pirates, the shield actually melted pretty quick. Now, it is worth pointing out that that was also with no shield management. You know, I wasn't trying to jump into different stations, and I wasn't using the hotkeys. It was basically just the default kit, and I was getting hit where I was being hit. So I think when you have, you know, turret operators that are acting as a deterrent, when you've got people that are relying more on missiles and you've got the countermeasures, I think you've got crew managing your shields, I think this ship should be a lot more frightening to deal with. But when there is nobody shooting back and it was just a big freighter being attacked by 2 single-seat ships, it wasn't holding up as well as I would have hoped it to. You know, for example, the Starfarer Gemini was able to take just another pounding. You know, a couple single-seat ships wasn't even a concern for a long time. This was a different case. So I think this ship is probably better suited to having an escort riding along anyways, and I think when you start talking about the way that the Drake line is going to interact with each other, it's probably better suited to having that just for overall protection and to give you the best control. But just summarizing the ship in flight, faster than expected, more nimble than expected, less durable than expected, a lot more fun than expected. So if you guys have questions about the Caterpillar, please let me know. It's a really cool ship, and I'm excited to see more of you get a chance to fly it. Otherwise, stay tuned for a whole lot more content coming your way soon, and have yourselves a wonderful day. Take care.